Hello students, today we are going to do Act 1 Scene 1 of Merchant of Venice. Before we start with the scene, it's necessary to look at the mythological events. Like in this act, we will be encountering some new words like Nestor, Janus, then Golden Fleece, Sir Oracle. Then we'll also be seeing Cargo, Argosies, Wealthy Andrew. So we should look at some of these things first of all, so that when we read or we go through Act 1, Scene 1, things become more clear. So the first thing that we are going to encounter in our Act 1, Scene 1 is Wealthy Andrew and you can say Argosies. Argosies actually means a wealthy merchant ship, but actually Argo was a ship which was built by Argus. Argus had built this ship for Jason, who was a sea robber, so that Jason could take the Golden Fleece with the help of his life partner, Medea. And so for his purpose only, Argus had built the ship by the name of Argo. So here Argosies means wealthy merchant ships carrying a heavy cargo. Then comes the second is Wealthy Andrew. In 1596, the English captured a Spanish ship in Cadiz. That means the English had captured a ship of Spain in Cadiz in 1596. This ship was named as Andrea. This had run aground. Run aground means it got stuck, it had ruined, wrecked, and that is why from that word Andrea we have got the term here Andrew. Andrew also means a wealthy merchant ship. Now comes a term like we can say Sir Oracle. Sir Oracle was actually the voice of God which was spoken through the priests and priestesses, and it was considered to be always the truth. It was actually, you can say, saying about the future. So whatever was spoken by the priests and priestesses was never interrupted by anybody. Nobody could question whatever was told by the priests and priestesses. So in this scene, we'll be encountering Sir Oracle also. Then comes Nestor. Nestor was actually the king of Pylos, but he had taken part in the Trojan War. He was known for his wisdom and for his gravity, that is for his seriousness. He never laughed at any joke. But if suppose he laughed at any joke, that joke was said to be worth laughable. Then there is Janus god. Janus god in Greek mythology is said to be a two-headed god which had two faces, one serious and the other is smiling. They were facing opposite each other. If one was inward, the other face was outward. This was used in order to tell that there are two types of people in the world, and the name January of our January month has come from Janus. This god was worshipped in all types of celebrations. It may be like marriage, planting times, harvest, the births, etc. So this god was worshipped by the Romans. And so one more term is left, and that is what? Golden Fleece. See, there is a story behind it. There were two twin brother sisters, Phrixus and Helle. They were going to be sacrificed in front of Zeus god, and so in order to save themselves, they ran away on their golden ram. Ram is actually a male sheep. That golden ram was known as Chrysomelas. It had wings. So that ram was flying in the air, carrying both the brothers and sisters. But what happened was, in between Helle, she fell down in a strait and she died over there. She got drowned. From that day onwards, that was known as Helle's port. But the brother somehow he reached to Colchos. It was the kingdom of King Actus. So he offered his ram to King Actus in order to save him. King Actus had taken out the golden fleece from that ram and he hung it on an oak tree in front of his god Ares. The constellation that we have got Aries as a sun sign, that term comes from this god Ares. This golden fleece was guarded by, you can say, dragon, so that nobody could steal it. But somehow Jason, with the help of his wife Medea, who knew how to use the magical herbs, she, with the help of the magical herbs, had made the dragon fall asleep. She made him unconscious, and somehow Jason was able to steal the golden fleece. So these terms are very important before we start with Act 1, Scene 1. So here now we have come to know who is Janus. Janus was a Greek god having two faces, one frowning and the other is smiling. And this god was worshipped at all types of celebrations and occasions, whether it is marriage, harvest period, birth, etc. The name January has come from this term Janus. And then we have come to know about Sir Oracle. Then we have come to know about Wealthy Andrew, in which a ship named Andrea, which was a Spanish ship, and on which the English people had attacked. They had captured it. This ship there, it ran aground and it was wrecked. So since then, Andrew means a big cargo ship. Then we have come to know about Argosies. Argo was a ship which was built by Argus for Jason, who could go on that ship. And with the help of his wife, Medea, that dragon which I told you now, was made unconscious by Medea so that they could steal the golden fleece. Golden fleece mythology, I've told you, there were two brothers, sisters, out of which the sister, she drowned. But the brother Phrixus, he somehow reached Colchos, which was a kingdom of King Actus. And he had taken out the golden fleece from that sheep and hung it on an oak tree before his god temple. His god was Ares, from which the constellation Aries has come. And this fleece was guarded by a dragon, but the dragon was made unconscious by Medea, who had the knowledge of using magical herbs, and somehow Jason was able to steal that golden fleece. So now let's look at Act 1, Scene 1. We'll be seeing all the dialogues of this scene. In the Act 1, Scene 1, we are introduced to a merchant named Antonio. He's a good and a rich merchant of Venice. And there are two other characters also. This scene takes place in Venice in a street where all the three characters are present. Antonio is there, Salarino is there, and Selene. They are actually the citizens of Venice only, but they are good friends of Antonio also. So in this scene, we are introduced to Antonio, who is in a melancholy mood. He doesn't know where has the sadness come from. He doesn't know the reason why he is sad. So Selene and Salarino are making assumptions that maybe due to this reason or that reason he is sad, which we'll be reading here. But then Antonio says that he is not sad because of these reasons. Then his friend Bassanio is introduced in this scene. Bassanio is, initially he was wealthy. He had come from a royal family, but he had, you can say, due to the outwardly show, he had consumed all his money and he had become just like a prodigal son. So he always depends on Shylock to help him in terms of money or in terms of anything else. And we are introduced to the amount that Bassanio is going to ask. Although in this scene we are not told about the amount, but it is 3,000 ducats, which Antonio doesn't have presently because all his ships have gone to 4 different places along with other places also. They were Tripolis, Indies, Mexico, and England. So he had asked Bassanio to go to Venice to other merchants and ask money in his name, to which Antonio would be bound to pay the amount back. So let's see. Let's start with the dialogues. Antonio. In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me, you say, it wearies you. But how I caught it, found it, or came by it, what stuff is made of, whereof it is born. Antonio says that I do not know. In reality, I do not know. In sooth means in truth, or in reality, I do not know why I am so sad. And it tires me off. You people also say that you look tired, but I cannot find out that how I have become sad. From where has the sadness come inside me? And what material it is made up of, I am unable to know. From where it has originated, the reason is still unknown to me. And such a want which sadness makes of me. Because of this sadness, I am behaving just like a dull fellow, and I cannot use my brain at all. That means he cannot think more, because this sadness makes him a dull fellow. That I have much ado to know myself. He says that I have still to explore myself, that what has happened to me, why I am so sad. Then Celerino says, your mind is tossing on the ocean, there where your argosies with portly sail, like Signiors and rich burghers on the flood, or as it were the pageants of the sea, to overpeer the petty traffickers that courtesy to them, do them reverence as they fly by with their woven wings. So here Salarino is making an assumption that maybe due to this reason he is sad. What is that assumption? See, Salarino says, I think you are completely, your mind is on the ocean where your argosies. Now we have studied about argosies. I told you about the mythology. So argosies are the wealthy merchant ships related to that Argo ship built by Argus for Jason. So he says that your mind is tossing on the ocean. Your mind is completely on the ocean where your rich merchant ships are sailing with their grand sails. And these big ships, when they move by, and the small ships also move by, moving up and down on the waves of the sea, it seems as if the small ships are paying respect to your big merchant ships, just like the royal merchants or the people of high class, when they pass through the streets, the common people, they bow in front of them in order to pay reverence to them. Reverence means to pay respect to them. So similarly, when the small petty traffickers means the small ships, when the small ships they move on the waves of the ocean, it seems as if they are bowing in front of your big merchant ships to pay reverence or to pay respect to them. Then Selenio says, believe me, sir, had I such venture for, the better part of my affections would be with my hopes abroad. I should be still plucking the grass to know where sits the wind, peering in maps for ports and piers and roads, and every object that might make me fear misfortune to my ventures, out of doubt would make me sad. Selenio makes his own assumption. He says that, believe me, if my ventures, that means my ships would have been sailing on the ocean, though most of the time I would have been thinking of those ships only, and my feelings, my thoughts, all would be engaged in thinking about their whereabouts. And in such a case, I would be plucking the blades of the grass in order to see in which direction the wind blows. And I would be looking into the maps in order to see the seaports or harbors where my ships would be standing or they would be harbored. But at the same time, looking at the maps, I would also come to know the dangers that would be caused to my ships and everything that could make them harm. Then Salarino says, my wind cooling my broth would blow me to an awe, when I thought what harm a wind too great at sea might do. I should not see the sandy hourglass run, But I should think of shallows and of flats, and see my wealthy Andrew dogged in sand, veiling her high top lower than her ribs. To kiss her burial should I go to church, and see the holy edifice of a stone, and not bethink me straight of dangerous rocks, which touching but my gentle vessel's side, would scatter all her spices in the stream, and robe the roaring waters with my silks. And in a word, but even now words this, and now worth nothing shall I have the thought to think on this, and shall I lack the thought that such a thing be chance would make me sad. But tell not me, I know Antonio is sad to think upon his merchandise. So in this speech, Salarino is giving us three reasons which would make him very much sad. What are those three reasons? He says if my ships would have been on the sea, then whenever I would cool my soup with the help of the breath, though it would remind me of the winds and storms that can cause danger to my ships. And if I would have seen the sandy hourglass, what is a sandy hourglass? It is actually an apparatus to see the time. In old days, time was seen by sandy hourglass, in which there were two spheres of glass which were joined together, and the sand of one glass, when it reaches to the sand of the other glass, it means 1 hour has passed. So he says that by looking at the sandy hourglass, I would be reminded of the shallow flats. Shallow flats, the part of the sea where there is less water and more rocks. So he would be reminded of the shallow flats where his merchandise would get stuck, and it would become the burial ground of his ship. So it would be wrecked, and it would just get stuck into that shallow flat. It would be overturned in such a way that the front part would be lowered, and you can say the hind part would be at the top. So it would become a burial ground for his ship. Then the third thing that he says was that if he goes to the church and he sees the holy edifice, the holy rocks with which the church has been built, it would remind him of the perilous rocks. Perilous means dangerous rocks through which his ship sides could get, you can say, hurt, or they would just collide with it, and the ship would be wrecked. And all the spices and all the rich merchandise would spread all over the sea. Even the silks would spread all over the sea in such a way as if it was enrobing it. Enrobing means covering the entire sea with silk. So he says, believe me, if such things I would have seen, I would definitely have thought about my ships in such a way. So Antonio, tell me no other reason, but I think you are worried only about your merchandise. So three reasons he says that by looking at three things, he will be reminded of the three types of dangers. One is cooling his soup with his breath would remind him of the winds and storms that can be dangerous to his ships. Second is seeing the sandy hourglass, he would be reminded of the shallow flats on which his ship would get stuck, and it would turn upside down, and it would become a burial ground for his ship. And third is seeing at the holy edifice of the church, he would be reminded of the perilous rocks which could be of great danger to his ships, and his ships could get wrecked, and all the spices and the precious material would spread all over the sea along with the silk and robing it. But Antonio says, believe me, no, I thank my fortune for it. My ventures are not in one bottom trusted, not to one place, not is my whole estate upon the fortune of this year, present year. Therefore, my merchandise makes me not sad. So Antonio denies. He says, no, it is not the reason for my being sad. He says that I'm thankful to my good luck that I don't have to worry much about my wealth and my, you can say, money. Because one thing is that all my fortunes, yeah, all my ships, all my ventures are not going to one place. They are scattered in all directions to go to different places. Mainly four places are there: Tripolis, Indies, Mexico, and England, which can be termed as time. Plus, other ships are also going to other places. But he says that even the wealth of this year does not depend on the business of this year only. So I do not have to think much about my merchandise. This does not make me sad. Salarino says, why then you are in love? Salarino says, if all of these are not the reasons, then definitely you are in love. Antonio says that you should be shameful of you. 5-5 means to have shame. Salarino says that not in love neither, then let us say you are sad because you are not merry, and 'twere as easy for you to laugh and leap and say you are merry because you are not sad. Now by two-headed Janus, nature hath framed strange fellows in her time, some that will evermore peep through their eyes and laugh like parrots at a bagpiper, and other of such vinegar aspect that they'll not show their teeth in way of a smile, though Nestor swear the jest be laughable. So you say, then one thing I would definitely say, if you are not in love also, then we will say that you are sad because you are not happy. And at times when you will be happy, we'll say that you are happy because you are not sad. Then here he takes the name of Janus god, which we have discussed in the mythology. That by looking at Janus god, we get an inspiration that there are two types of people in the world. One who are always smiling, even at petty things, and they keep on laughing and smiling in such a way that half their eyes are shut, and with their half shut eyes, they can look all around the world. And they are so much, you can say, a jolly nature that they'll keep on laughing even at the sound of the bagpiper. The others are of vinegar aspect. Vinegar aspect having a serious countenance, serious face, and they would not laugh even at a joke which Nestor we have discussed in the mythology, he was a king of Pylos, and he never laughed at a joke, but he laughed, if he laughed, then that joke was worth laughable. But these type of people would not laugh even at that joke which Nestor would swear and say, yes, this joke is worth laughable. So he means to say that nature has created two types of persons. One who are always cheerful and smiling, and the other who are always serious. Then Selenio says, here comes Bassanio, your most noble kinsman, Graciano and Lorenzo. Very well, we leave you now with better company. Selenio says, oh, here three people are coming. Your best friend Bassanio is there. Kinsman means a friend. So your most noble friend Bassanio is here. Graciano and Lorenzo are also coming. So I think me and Salarino must take leave, and we leave you in a better company. Salarino says, I would have stayed till I had made you merry, if worthier friends had not prevented me. Salarino said that if these friends were not coming, I would have stayed here till I had made you smile or laugh. But now more worthy people have come. They can make you laugh. So I think we should go. Antonio says, your worth is very dear in my regard. I take it your own business calls on you, and you embrace the occasion to depart. Antonio says, well, your presence is quite precious for me, and I do respect your presence with me. But I take this opportunity when you people are leaving that maybe you have some important business due to which you are taking leave. And then Bassanio and Lorenzo and Graciano, they enter. Salarino wishes them good morrow. Good morrow means good day to my good lords. Bassanio says, good signors both. When shall we laugh? Say when. You grow exceeding strange. Must it be so? Bassanio says that you good gentlemen. Signors means gentlemen. Good gentlemen, tell me when will we sit together and have jokes and laugh with each other? So where and when? Because you people are growing exceedingly strange that you, as soon as you see me, you go away. Salarino says we'll make our leisures to attend on you. Salarino says we'll take out some time, some leisure time in order to sit with you and have good talks. After saying this, both Salarino and Selenio, they exit. Now Lorenzo, he says, My Lord Bassanio, since you have found Antonio, we too will leave you, but at dinner time, I pray you have in mind where we must meet. Lorenzo says to Bassanio that now you have found your good friend, so I think Graciano and me should take leave from here. And I suppose that you already know where you have to meet for at dinner time. Bassanio says, I will not fail you. That means I'll be there and don't worry. Then Graciano, he starts talking to Antonio and he says, You look not well, Signor Antonio. You have too much respect upon the world. They lose it that do buy it with much care. Believe me, you are marvelously changed. Graciano says that by your face, it seems as if you are not well. And gentleman Antonio, I think you are thinking much about the world, the worldly affairs. And those who think about the worldly affairs, they actually lose it. So you should think about yourself and not about the worldly affairs. And if you believe me, according to me, you have changed a lot. Antonio says, I do not think about the worldly affairs, but according to me, world is a stage and every person has some role to play on it. And my role is to play of a sad person. Then Graciano says, Let me play the fool with mirth and laughter. Let old wrinkles come, and let my liver rather heat with wine than my heart cool with mortifying groans. Why should a man whose blood is warm within sit like his grandsire cut an alabaster, sleep when he wakes and creep into jaundice? By being peevish, I tell thee what, Antonio, I love thee, and it is my love that speaks that there are sort of men whose visages do cream and mantle like a standing pond. So Graciano says, okay, if your role is that of a sad person, then my role would be of a clown. And I will start laughing and enjoying in such a way that till wrinkles come towards the corners of the eyes. I will keep on laughing and I will try to heat my liver by drinking wine rather than cool my heart with mortifying groans, means feeling sad and then taking a sigh, like as we say. So these type of sighs will, instead of cooling my heart, instead of taking such type of you can say grief type of sighs, it will be better for me that I drink wine and heat up my liver. Then he talks to Antonio also, looking at his countenance, that it doesn't suit a young man like you to sit in such a way as if you are the statue of your grandfather which has been carved out of a marble. And plus, it seems as if you are sleepy when you are still awake. And then he says that such people who are irritable in nature, irritable means sometimes smiling, sometimes being sad, sometimes being loud. So such type of people who are irritable in nature are prone to develop a disease of jaundice. And I tell you, Antonio, I love you, and that is why, because of this love, out of this love, I am telling you that there are several people in the world who have got serious faces in such a way that you cannot make out what they are thinking of. Visages means face. They have got expressionless face, and it seems as if like a standing pond. You people must have seen that if a pond does not have any movement in the water, a scum is formed on it. Or if a milk is kept for some time on the table without having drunk even a sip of it, then a creamy layer is formed on top of it. So he says that such expressionless faces are compared to the scum of the standing pond and to the layer of cream on the milk. And do a willful stillness entertain. They say that deliberately they put on such type of appearance so that people may think that they are profound thinker and they are learned men, wise men, and it seems as if those people are trying to say by their face that I am Sir Oracle. As Sir Oracle, I told you, it is a voice of God spoken by the priests and priestesses. And when I open my lip, let no dog bark. That means whenever I start speaking, let nobody interfere in whatever I am speaking. So, O my Antonio, I do know of these, that therefore they are reputed wise for saying nothing, when I am sure, if they should speak, would almost damn those ears. So he says that, I tell you, Antonio, when such people they start speaking, although people may repute them, they may consider them with respect that yes, they are Sir Oracle or whatever. But if suppose such people they start speaking, then those who had an impression about them that they are wise and profound thinkers would hold their ears, because these people when they start speaking they speak a lot of rubbish, due to which they will damn their ears. The people who had an impression about them, they would damn their ears that what have they heard from there, because they speak a lot of nonsense. So I'll tell you more of this another time, but fish not with this melancholy bait. He says that I have to tell you more about on this topic, but I request you that you also do not try to wear such a countenance that people may have an impression about you that you are Sir Oracle. Do not fish with this melancholy bait, means do not try to attract the foolish multitude, the foolish people with your melancholy bait. Bait is an instrument used to catch the fish from the river. So he says that do not try to attract the people by your melancholy and this expressionless face, that people may also have a reputation about you that you are Sir Oracle. For this good fool gudgeon, this opinion come good Lorenzo, very well a while. I end my exhortation after dinner. So he says that gudgeon is a worthless fish, because the people they are worthless. They just see the outer appearance of a person and they start giving respect to that person. So he says, well, I have to finish this good advice, but at dinner time. Presently, I have to take leave. So he requests Antonio that please do not try to attract the people with this melancholy bait. Lorenzo says, well, we'll leave you till dinner time. I must be one of those same dumb wise men, for Gratiano never lets me speak. Lorenzo says, he also bids farewell to Antonio and Bassanio, and he says, we'll meet at dinner time. And I think I'll also have to remain silent, because Gratiano will never let me speak. I'll have to behave like those people who wear that expressionless face. Gratiano says, well, keep me company for 2 years more. Thou shalt not know the sound of thine own tongue. Gratiano then further aggravates the talk of Lorenzo and says that if you stay with me for 2 more years, I'll not let you speak a word. And when you will be speaking, you will grow strange. You will feel strange that is it your own voice or not. Then Antonio says, farewell, I'll grow a talker for this year. Antonio says, okay, I bid you goodbye, but I'll take your advice in a positive manner and I will try to become a talker. I'll start talking. Then Gratiano says, thank you for your faith, for silence is only commendable in needs tongue right. Gratiano says, thank you for taking my advice in a positive manner, because I tell you that silence is suitable only for 2 people. One is an ox who has a dried tongue, and the other is a maiden who has not got married. After that, both of them exit, Gratiano and Lorenzo. Then Antonio, he asks Bassanio, what do you think about Gratiano? What does he say? So Bassanio says, Gratiano speaks an infinite deal of nothing. More than any man in all Venice, his reasons are as 2 grains of wheat hid in 2 bushels of chaff. You shall seek all day ere you find them, and when you have them, they are not worth the search. Bassanio says, see, about Gratiano, I must tell you that he is a person who speaks too much in Venice, and that too a lot of nonsense. And if you try to find out the meaning of whatever he told you throughout the day, your whole day will be wasted, and only two important things of your, you can say, of your mean will be worth searching in that talk. You will feel that it was not worth searching. This is just like when after harvest you try to beat the paddy in order to get the grains of rice. So the husk which is left around, most of those things, most of the paddy will be having only husk. And throughout the day, when you have beaten all the paddy, you will be finding only 2 grains of rice throughout the day. So similar is the case with his talk. If you try to find out the whole day kya keh raha tha, what is the meaning of his talk, you will never be able to get anything in sense. Only 2 things of sense would be there, which would be worth searching. And you will feel that it was nonsense searching the whole day. Then Antonio says, well, tell me now, what lady is the same? Then Antonio asks him, you have come here to tell me about a lady. You said that you will be going and paying a secret pilgrimage. That means you will have to go there and visit her. Then Bassanio says, well, it is known to you, Antonio, that how much I have spent all my wealth and I have disabled myself. I have come to a state of having nothing with me. So, thus my faint mean would grant continuance. He says that I had spent a lot, which even exceeded the amount of income that I used to earn. And because of which now I have gone bankrupt, and something like too prodigal. Prodigal son, the story as given in Bible is a son had asked his share of property from his father. His father gave him the share of property. He went away with his friends and he spent all the money along with his friends, enjoying and doing everything whatever he liked in life. Later on, when he had consumed all the money, he was left with nothing. His friends also deserted him. They left him. So this shows that he also has become, you can say, prodigal. He has also nothing left. So he says that I owe you everything in love and in money. So you are the one on whom I can depend for everything. And you are the one who will help me to get out of all the debts that I have taken till now. So Antonio says, I pray you, good Bassanio, let me know it, and if it stand as you yourself still do, within the eye of honor, be assured, my purse, my person, my extremest means lie all unlocked to your occasions. Antonio says that I request you tell me what I have to do. If it is within my means, then everything I'll do for you. Even to whatever I can do, even to my purse, to my wealth, anything that is possible for me to do for you, I'll do everything. I'll spend everything for you. You just tell me what I have to do. Then Bassanio says he gives an example of his school days, that in school days when he was a good archer, he used to shoot one arrow in one direction, and if he lost it, then he used to shoot another arrow in the same direction, but this time with more careful watch, that he used to follow that arrow, and in finding that arrow, he used to automatically find the previous arrow also. So he says that I am telling you this example in order to show that I am innocent person and I have no cleverness in me. But if you help me to give some loan, if you can give me some loan, then I promise you that definitely I'll pay you this loan back after my purpose is solved, and I'll try to pay both the loans. But if not, then I'll pay you definitely this loan and remain indebted for the first loan to you forever. So, Antonio says, you know me well. You already know that I can do anything for you. And you are just wasting time in speaking such talks. To come to the point and tell me what I have to do. If you are just speaking like this, it means you are doubting my love and my care for you. That means you are questioning my uttermost that I can do for you. And then do say to me what I should do. Whatever you ask me, I'll try to do that. Just tell me that. That in your knowledge may be done, and I'm pressed unto it. Therefore speak. He says that in your knowledge, whatever I can do, you tell me that. And I am bound to help you. So you just speak out. So Bassanio, then he says that in Belmont there is a young lady. She is richly left. She has inherited a lot of property from her deceased father. And her name is Portia. She is so beautiful that she is no less in beauty to the Portia of Julius Caesar, who was the wife of Bassanio and the daughter of Cato. So he says that she is so beautiful that her worth, even her, you can say, knowledge, her wisdom, her beauty, her virtue, everything is famous throughout the world. So from all the four corners of the world, all the suitors are coming to woo her. And her sunny locks, her golden hair, which come on the temple, they remind me of the golden fleece. Now we have studied in the mythology, golden fleece, which I told you about the two brothers and sisters. So, which makes a seat of Belmont Colchos strand. So he says that due to which it seems as if Belmont is considered to be like Colchos, surrounded by water all over. And many Jasons, the suitors, are being compared to Jason, who with the help of his wife Medea had stolen the golden fleece. So he says, Antonio, if you can help me, because I have an intuition in mind that if I go and participate in the lottery of casket, the shooting game, then I am 100% sure that I will be the one who is going to win. And I know that Portia loves me a lot because I have received fair speechless messages from her eyes. Her eyes have always spoken that she likes me. So, questionless, I'll be fortunate in winning that lottery of casket. The only thing is that I do not have money with me. Antonio says, you know that all my fortunes, that means all my ships have gone to sea and I have invested all my money in that business. So presently I have no money and nor any commodity which I can keep with somebody in order to get money for you. But on my credit, you can go in Venice to any of the merchant and ask money in my name and take as much as you want. Here it is saying even to the uttermost. To the uttermost means whatever amount of money you want, you can take as much money as you want from those merchants. Go presently inquire and I will be the one who will be the guarantor to return the money. So on your behalf, I'll be the one to return them the money. So you go and on my name, you can take the money from any of the merchant. So this scene ends up here. So in this scene, we come to know that Bassanio is asking money from Antonio, the rich merchant, but presently he doesn't have any money with him. So he is asking Bassanio to take money from any of the merchants in Venice. But at the same time, he's saying that I'll be the one who will be paying them the money back. You will not have any tension about it. So this shows that Antonio was a good friend, a loyal friend of Bassanio, that for him he can take the risk of paying the money on his behalf. And here we have come to know all the mythologies have been used in this story. So hope you have understood Act 1, Scene 1. If you like it, press the like button. You leave after listening to this video so that further you can get more of the stories and the drama sequences and poems, and plus a grammar exercises also. Thank you.